Hello, this is the McKinley Paper Contractor Safety Orientation presentation. During the next few minutes, we are going to briefly review the safety expectations of McKinley Paper for contractors. Please understand that your safety, and the safety of those working with you, is very important to McKinley Paper. For this reason, we ask you to pay close attention to this presentation and follow our rules and expectations while in our mill. If you have any questions as a result of watching this presentation, please be sure to ask your mill representative, or McKinley Paper's safety coordinator for clarification. Thank you. Our mill is in constant motion with machinery, vehicles, and people all mingling and crossing paths on a continuous basis. For this reason, we ask that no vehicles come inside the mill gates unless approved by your mill representative. In addition, only those specific vehicles approved by your mill representative are to be brought inside mill gates. For all other vehicles, a contractor's parking lot has been set up on the east side of the mill. The entrance to the contractor's lot is made from Marine Drive, and shares the same entrance as the gate for the corporate headquarters. Here is the sign you will see as you proceed west on Marine Drive towards the mill. Following these signs will direct you to the designated lot. While theft from vehicles has not been an issue in the past, we strongly encourage you to properly lock and secure all materials and vehicles while at the mill. When driving on the mill site, please closely observe and follow all traffic signs. Please note that the speed limit on the public portion of Marine Drive is only 15 miles per hour. Inside the mill gates, this speed limit drops to 5 miles per hour. While on the mill site, you will notice that there are many corners with impaired or severely restricted views. When approaching these corners, please slow down and sound your horn to alert anyone coming from the other direction. If you are parking your vehicle inside the mill gates, please use the area designated by your representative. Make sure that your parked vehicle is not blocking any building exits, pathways, or emergency lanes for emergency response vehicles. Our facility encompasses a large area with many structures. To avoid the possibility of getting lost or placing yourself at risk for unrecognized dangers, we ask that you please stay in the immediate area of your designated work. If you are on tour of the facility, please stay with your guide and follow all instructions from your host. Personal protective equipment, or PPE for short, is required at all times while in the mill. For contractors, the expectation of McKinley Paper is that you will be wearing ANSI-approved safety shoes with steel toes, ANSI-approved eye protection, and a hard hat at all times. For visitors in the mill, closed-toed shoes are required, along with eye protection, and a hard hat. Many areas of the mill are quite noisy. Areas where the noise levels exceed 85 decibels are posted. Hearing protection is required at all times while in these areas. If you are welding, cutting, or grinding, you are expected to wear the proper protection, including such items as goggles, face shields, welding hoods, gloves, gauntlets, or other protective clothing as appropriate while the activities are ongoing. If you are handling or moving chemicals, we expect you to be using all appropriate PPE as specified in the manufacturer's MSDS sheet. If you're working on the dock area, and are within 6 feet of the water's edge, you must be wearing an appropriate personal flotation device. If you are working on the effluent clarifiers or water filtration setting basins, and they are filled with water, we expect you to be wearing an appropriate personal flotation device. One of the greatest risks in a paper mill is fire. It is our experience that poor housekeeping directly contributes to both the number of fires and the severity. For this reason, we ask that you keep your work area clean and orderly at all times. Saving cleanup until the end of the job is not acceptable. Discuss the proper guidelines for waste and scrap disposal with your mill representative. Hazardous chemicals and flammable materials present special risk. Again, please discuss in advance with your mill representative for the proper storage and handling procedures. The mill has very strict and detailed procedures regarding energy isolation. All equipment must be completely de-energized, and properly tagged out, and locked out, before any work is allowed to commence. All contractors and their employees must be fully trained on lockout procedures. Documentation of this training must be available for review by your mill representative, or the mill safety coordinator upon request. All contract workers are to be locked out under their own individual personal lock, with each lock to clearly be identified with the name of employee, and the name of the employer inscribed on the lock. Locks are to be applied before any work begins, and be promptly removed at the completion of the work or the end of the work shift, as appropriate. At no time should a contract employee have a lock applied if they are not physically on the mill site. Your mill representative will assist in determining the proper energy isolation procedures to safely complete your job. The mill has specific rules regarding the opening, or closing, of electrical disconnects. Access to switch centers and MCCs must be kept clear at all times. Electrical equipment rated higher than 480 volts is to be operated only by the owner's employees, unless there is specific permission granted by your mill representative. Only certified electricians are allowed to open or close disconnects with voltages greater than 480 volts. McKinley requires a 10-foot distance from any open panel or exposed electrical source. If you are using water for washup, you are responsible for any damage caused to electrical equipment. Water washup should be reviewed and coordinated with your mill representative in advance. All electrical shocks are to be reported immediately to your mill representative. It is the duty and responsibility of the contractor and their employees performing any hot work on McKinley Paper's premises to comply with any and all applicable federal, state, and local codes. McKinley requires a hot work permit for any work that involves brazing, cutting, grinding, soldering, torch-applied roofing, or welding. This is our hot work permit. McKinley requires that hot work permits be properly filled out and approved prior to initiation of all hot work activities. Permits are issued for a single crew and single shift only. A change in crew or the end of the shift requires a new hot work permit before any work can begin or continue. Please see your mill representative for the proper forms and approvals. The mill has many chests, tanks, and limited access areas which meet the legal WISHA definition of being a confined space. Confined spaces can be very hazardous and require special preparation, training, and procedures. If your work involves, or potentially involves a confined space, please work with your mill representative to properly identify the spaces and receive appropriate assistance with identifying hazards, air testing, air monitoring, and entry monitoring to ensure a safe entry. A confined space permit must be completed before entry begins. All entrants and attendants must be fully trained. All permit-required confined spaces must be ventilated before, and continuously, during entry. In addition, any trenching or excavations that are 4 feet or deeper below grade level also require special procedures and safety precautions including barriers, warnings, and proper shoring. The mill is a very diverse workplace with many pieces of equipment and unit operations that present hazards to the unaware person. Many of these hazards have specific warning signs identifying the dangers. In addition, we have many general signs warning of concern such as traffic signs, high noise levels, slippery floors, overhead work or hoists, moving equipment, and remote activation of machinery. Please pay close attention to these warnings and follow them at all times. We also have a lot of moving equipment. A lot of this equipment has special guards or barriers to keep you out of danger. Please do not remove, bypass, or circumvent these barriers. If a guard or barrier needs to be removed or bypassed, you must work with your mill representative to properly assess the risk and apply the applicable energy isolation procedures to ensure your safety, as well as prevent damage to the equipment. If your work area is hazardous, or entry into your work area presents hazards to employees, you must erect either yellow caution tape or red danger tape that prevents casual entry into the hazardous area. In addition, signage or tags specifying the exact danger is appropriate. Excavations over 4 feet deep must be properly shored and barricaded to prevent falls or collapse entrapment. Open manholes or hatches that present a potential fall hazard must also be barricaded to prevent inadvertent exposure to the hazard. All McKinley cranes and hoists require pre-authorization to use. If you are granted permission to use McKinley equipment, it is expected that any person operating the equipment be properly trained in safe rigging and lifting techniques, so as to operate the crane or hoist in a safe manner and pose no danger to personnel or equipment. McKinley requires that all crew members involved in the use of cranes or hoists be properly trained in the usage of clear and accepted hand signals for communication during operation. It is never acceptable to stand under a suspended load. Suspended loads are never allowed to pass over the paper machines while in operation. Falls account for many of the serious or fatal accidents facing workers in the United States. When work exposes personnel to heights of more than 4 feet without guardrails, and they are working within 4 feet of the edge of that hazard, a formal fall protection plan must be in force. This plan must be in compliance with WSHA guidelines, and a fall restraint, arrest system, or positioning system must be used as appropriate. A copy of the completed plan is to be provided to your mill representative before starting work. If any work is to be done where personnel are exposed to heights of more than 4 feet without guardrails, there must be barriers or safety warnings of the hazard. Work from ladders 10 feet or more above the floor requires a formal fall protection plan. When using extension ladders, or other ladders that lean against something for support, these ladders must be secured. When you first enter your assigned work area, please acquaint yourself with the location of the fire alarms, emergency eyewashes, emergency showers, fire extinguishing equipment, and exits. In the case of any emergency, the Mill Response Center is the cogeneration control room. They will coordinate with emergency services for you should they be needed. The emergency phone number is 911 from any mill phone extension. In the case of a fire or severe injury where assistance is needed immediately, activate the mill fire alarm by pulling any manual pull firebox station, followed by a call to 911 from any mill extension, or radio, to confirm the exact location and circumstances of the alarm. If emergency evacuation is required from any area of the mill, notification will be given over the mill alarm system. If evacuation of the area where the contractor's work crew is working becomes necessary, personnel are to proceed to the exit, and then to the contractor emergency muster area. This area is located adjacent to the IT building as shown here on the map. Further instructions will be given from there. The mill has a very strict MSDS and hazardous material policy. Prior to bringing any potentially hazardous materials or substances on the mill site, a list of all materials, along with a proper MSDS sheet, will be provided to the mill representative for review and approval. Any material that is not approved shall not be brought onto the mill property. All containers of hazardous, toxic, flammable, or irritating substances shall be properly labeled and stored while on mill property. You should be aware that McKinley uses many different chemicals in our processes. Some of these can be very hazardous. For a list of these materials, as well as the location and recommended protective measures, please consult the Port Angeles Mill Hazardous Material List. Copies of the MSDS sheets for any material used by McKinley Paper is available from your mill representative. All contractors entering the mill site must be familiar with the HMIS labeling system and the associated personal protective equipment legends. Contractors are expected to follow this guidance at all times. The McKinley Paper Mill was originally constructed in the 1920s. As such, asbestos was used in various areas of the mill for items such as insulation and building materials. The mill has removed most asbestos from our site, but some still remains. Most of the materials or areas potentially containing asbestos are clearly marked with labels similar to this one. It is McKinley Paper policy that only contractors and personnel certified by the state of Washington are allowed to handle, remove, or mitigate asbestos. If you suspect the area you are working in contains asbestos, you should suspend work and immediately contact your mill representative. McKinley expects that the usage of compressed air and compressed gases will be in compliance with WSHA guidelines. Compressed air is not to be used for personal cleaning or to blow material off your clothing or equipment. All compressed gas cylinders must have proper caps. Cylinders must be properly restrained at all times using only WSHA-approved techniques, such as strapping and chains. The usage of tied rope to secure tanks is not acceptable. Regulators and hoses with compressed gas cylinders are to be inspected prior to usage. Damaged or defective equipment is to be properly removed from service. All compressed gas cylinders will be shut off when not in use, and at no time are they to be taken into a confined space. No fire system hoses or water connections are to be used for any purpose other than fire protection without the permission of your mill representative. No sprinkler valve or fire water main is to be closed or removed from service without authorization from your mill representative. Clear access to firefighting equipment must be maintained at all times. All roads or aisles must be cleared of stored materials or vehicles so that emergency response personnel or equipment have clear and unrestricted access. Anyone discovering a fire shall report it immediately. This is done by activating the nearest manual fire alarm station and dialing 911 on any mill phone extension. Fire is one of the greatest risks to a paper mill. McKinley Paper property is a smoke-free property. Smoking is prohibited at all times while on mill property, with the only exception being inside of your private vehicle. McKinley also prohibits the use of alcohol or illegal substances or drugs on mill grounds. Anyone caught smoking, consuming alcohol, or using illicit substances while on mill grounds is subject to immediate and permanent removal from mill property. McKinley takes safety very seriously. We expect that you can, and will work safely while at the mill site. Where an accident does occur, you should be aware that the basic first aid care of the contractor's employee is the responsibility of the contractor. McKinley expects that the contractor shall have at least one trained first aid provider on site at all times. For a more severe injury where more qualified assistance is required, please activate the mill emergency response system by calling 911 from any mill telephone extension, or pulling the nearest fire alarm. All injuries are to be reported to your mill representative. In the event of a serious accident involving severe injuries or significant property damage, a joint accident investigation will be promptly conducted. The report, as well as any follow-up investigation or information, will also be provided to your mill representative. This has been a very brief overview of our expectations and may not cover all specific expectations as outlined in the McKinley Mill Regulations for contractors. Please carefully review our written regulations, especially as they may apply to your expected work and any potential dangers or hazards. Any questions should be addressed to your mill representative. We want you to be safe while here at McKinley Paper. We appreciate your attention to this presentation and wish you a safe experience while at McKinley Paper. Thank you for your time and attention.